Yes, I taught Henry Mollicone orchestration. He'd come to this studio, in fact, though it was a long time ago. Anyway, he came for his orchestration lesson or composition lesson, whatever. I don't remember the difference at that time. And it was a pleasure to get to know him. He was my only private student at the time. I never taught privately. I always taught through a school. And at that time, I think it was Boston University. I liked him very much, and I liked his music. I don't know, and he was straight. That should have dulled my interest, but it didn't. There's something very nice about him.
What do you think of the very idea of writing an opera so small that it can be done in a bar? What do
I
you
think
think
it's
about that?
I think it is an inspired idea as it is practical,
Why?
because it can be done anywhere.
So what do you think about mixing voice and spoken dialogue?
Well, I obviously love it since I've done it my whole life. I think it's very fresh, and because there's no tradition for how you speak, it gives a lot of freedom. Speak against music.
Do singers ever resist that, in your experience?
No, they have no choice, but they are often singers have not learned to put expression into speaking. They put it in their singing, so if they haven't had stage experience or done operetta, they don't usually know how to put that feeling into words. So sometimes they have to have help.
You know, I was thinking that Henry writes quite well for the voice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's very effective.
But writing for voice, can that be learned? Or is that something you either have or you don't?
Halfway there in between. You need a talent to do composing, to do anything. Plus, you can learn something too. I often think that the first difficult piece I wrote for voice, I Hear an Army, was for the Tanglewood Festival, and the singer who was going to do it had just been discovered by Gunther Schuller. She lived in Minnesota or somewhere. He brought her to Tanglewood. She had very little experience. Well, her name turned out to be Phyllis Brynjolfsson. So she sang the leading soprano of her day in contemporary music. So she sang my piece with great ease. And so I wrote her another piece. And finally I wrote her a piece called Syzygy, which is unbelievably difficult. Well, after I wrote that, I woke up and I thought, oh my God, I've written all this music for one singer. No one else will ever be able to do it. And of course, it's turned out that other singers have. But nonetheless, if I'd gone to that first rehearsal with my piece and it was a normal soprano saying this is unsingable, it's too high, it's too this, too that, I think that would have traumatized me. And my whole signature style, which is florid and high, might never have developed. I think there's a intimacy between performer and composer that can be formative.
How do you know when you need a melody?
Well, tend to have it all the time. Well, no, it's all I can speak for myself. I begin with a melody. I've got a thing, and then I have versions of it, and I collect things it can do and all kinds of possibilities, and then slowly, like building a mosaic, I put it together. What is sung or not sung, I'm never sure of. I don't know that. A lot of things are more flexible than not. The illusion you want to create is that this had to be the vocal line, but in reality, it's just what I create is a continuity that makes sense to me. He has a kind of harmony that is very different than mine. I would say it's more in the mainstream of American opera, a kind of harmony that's familiar, whereas I eschewed the development of harmony in the 20th century and went way back to romantic harmony pre 20th century. I know I don't get imitated. In fact, I'm still the most tonal composer. I started it, so to speak, and no one is as tonal as I, in the sense that I've taken on the whole tonal system of romantic harmony and I work with it. Whereas there's a kind of tonality which uses some tonal and some atonal and just kind of mix it up. But for some reason, once I hit Final Alice is still a mix of some atonality and tonal, but then when I hit Remember the Summer Day, which is all tonal, that was in fact the challenge, to see if I could write a piece as big as Final Alice and yet have it completely tonal. So since then, that was the early 80s, I've always remained with tonality. So you can't think back. When you do something when you write completely tonally, you take on the entire canon of music. And like you write a song or a piece, all of my tonal progressions are related to everybody else. You compare it, so you have to be as good as the masters of the past in some capacity. You have to have that kind of skill, and I think it's much harder to write a good tonal piece than to write an atonal piece, because the history of atonal music is much shorter, plus is much less differentiated. Atonality is a system which is not as good as tonality. It doesn't work in terms of contrast, building up a piece. It's just different, and I think less effective. But I have a harder time with an atonal piece telling how much I like it or don't like it, whereas a tonal piece, I mean, you just know, because you've heard so many examples of excellent tonal writing that but you have to take that on when you write.
Does there come a point where you though have to turn your back on it and say, I belong here and I'm doing it too?
It's exactly where I always have been. Yeah, you can't get self-conscious about it, but tonality is me. But I don't know anyone else who does it like that. So I'm the last. But this is his style. I mean, he doesn't sound influenced by Final Alice. It's very effective writing and very fluid, flexible. It's really a little classic, a little American classic.
Interesting.
There should be more barrooms available. Has it ever been done in another barroom?
Yes.
Oh, good. I mean, especially in New York, it would be a great gimmick.
Well, Sheldon Harnick talked about when he first heard Henry's music that he had this trepidation about hearing any modern classical music. He'd go to a concert the way I think most people do, which is sort of getting ready for the onslaught of atonality and noise and things that aren't easily understandable. He said he felt so relaxed, he felt his shoulders come down when he started hearing melody.
Yes, we're definitely filling a niche.
This is the actual original poem that faced on the barroom floor.
Such little drinks to a bum like me are miserably tame. 5 fingers, that's the scene, and corking and whiskey too. Well, here's luck, boys, and landlord. My best respects to you. You've treated me pretty kindly, and I'd like to tell you how I came to be this dirty sap you see before you now. As I told you once, I was a man with muscle, frame, and health. But for a blunder, ought have made considerable wealth. I was a painter, not one that dabbed on bricks or wood, but an artist, and for my age I was rated pretty good. I worked hard at my canvas, and bidding fair to rise, and gradually I saw the star of fame before my eyes. I made a picture, perhaps you've seen. It's called The Chase of Fame. It brought me £1,500 and added to my name.